Today, I can reveal that Meghan Markle's fakery with British Airways has just been exposed.
Not to interrupt the passengers. And it would be weird. They wouldn't just know that it was Harry.
A card. That is all this is. A single greeting card, posted to Instagram, covered in Hello magazine, turned into a People exclusive, and shared across every Sussex-friendly outlet from here to Los Angeles. One card. And yet that card, right now, still sitting on Meghan Markle's Instagram for anyone to read, contains 3 details that should never have been there. 3 details that do not add up. 3 details that, stacked on top of each other and placed next to the silence of one of the world's biggest airlines, collapse the entire official story completely. Tonight, we are going to read that card. Properly. Word by word. And by the time we are done, you will never look at a Sussex candid moment the same way again. Stay with me, because the most important word in this entire story is not on the card at all. It is what British Airways has refused to say, and why that refusal tells you everything. Setting the scene, May 18th, 2026. Let's place you on the timeline first, because context here is not background noise. It is evidence. May 18th, 2026. A British Airways Boeing 777, flight BA269, pushes back from Terminal 5 at Heathrow, 26 minutes late per Flight Aware and the publicly available Heathrow flight records that anyone can check right now. Destination, Los Angeles. Estimated flight time, 12 hours. In the premium cabin sits one very recognizable passenger, Meghan Markle. The day before this flight, she had been standing at a podium in Geneva, addressing the World Health Organization on the subject of what social media does to children. We have covered that speech on this channel. The audience was, to use the most generous possible word, modest. The following morning, she boarded a connecting flight from Switzerland to Heathrow, transited through Terminal 5, and stepped onto BA269 for the long leg home. Here is what is important. Not according to tabloids, not according to palace sources. According to every piece of published coverage of this story, People magazine, Hello, GB News, every outlet that ran it, this was a solo journey. Meghan's journey. Her connection through London was described by GB News as, quote, a secret appearance. The People exclusive does not place Harry on the flight. The Hello write-up does not place Harry on the flight. Nobody places Harry on the flight because, by his own repeated and recent statements, he does not travel to the United Kingdom. He was not photographed at Heathrow that week. He is simply not in this story. One passenger, one flight, one premium cabin, a 12-hour crossing over the Atlantic. Somewhere above the mid-Atlantic, approximately 6 hours in, someone on board hands Meghan a card. A bottle of champagne sits beside it. By the morning of May 19th, the card is on her Instagram, posted to 4.5 million followers. By that afternoon, People magazine has published an exclusive. Sourced to, and I want you to remember this exact phrasing, a source close to the Duchess of Sussex. Between the wheels of BA269 touching down at LAX and that People article going live, somewhere between 12 and 18 hours passed. What we know happened in that window is one Instagram post. The questions the official version of this story cannot answer are: who made the call to People magazine, who drafted the quote, who pitched the story, and to which editor? Only the person who placed that briefing knows. Keep all of that in your head as we go through what is actually written on the card, because it is where the first problem appears, and it is not a small one. Thing 1. The addressing. Read the card, not the Instagram caption, not the People article, the card itself. It says, Dearest Harry and Meghan. Not Dearest Meghan, not Congratulations, Duchess, not To Our Guest in Seat 1A. 2 names, both halves of a marriage. Harry and Meghan, plural, addressed as a couple, as a unit, as if both of them were sitting in that premium cabin for the full 12-hour crossing. Except, and this is the part the friendly press coverage simply refuses to sit with, Harry was not on the flight. Now ask yourself something straightforward. When cabin crew want to make a genuine, spontaneous gesture toward a single celebrated passenger, what do they write on the card? They write the name of the person in front of them, the person they can see, the person who is actually physically sitting in that seat. They do not pre-address a card to someone who is, by every published account of this story, not aboard the aircraft. Unless they were briefed in advance, unless someone told them, before the card was written, before the champagne was chosen, before the pen touched the paper, that the gesture was for a couple celebrating an anniversary, that the appropriate inscription was Harry and Meghan, both names, two people, a marriage. Think about what that means. The crew did not spontaneously reach for an absent husband's name. They were given it. Someone communicated it. That communication happened before the card was written, which means it happened before the moment the official story describes as spontaneous. The People magazine exclusive, sourced to that person close to the Duchess, describes the crew all coming to say happy anniversary and sharing memories of where they were on the day of the wedding. That is a genuinely lovely image. Cabin crew over the mid-Atlantic, remembering May 2018. Warm, human, touching. But the card says Harry and Meghan, and Harry wasn't there. That is not a small editorial slip to overlook in the analysis. That is the entire shape of the story. Who was the card actually for? One person in a seat, or a couple whose anniversary it was? And if it was for the couple, which the addressing makes clear it was, then the gesture was conceived as an anniversary gesture before it was executed as a spontaneous one. That is thing one. And we are only getting started. Before we go to thing two, I want you to pause and genuinely think about this. You have flown. Most of you have. You know what it is like when cabin crew go out of their way to make something special for a passenger. Maybe you have seen a birthday card, maybe a small cake, maybe a note. In every single one of those moments, every single one, the person writing the card writes the name of the person sitting in the seat. The person who is there, not their spouse at home, not their partner on another flight, the person in front of them. So here is the question I want you to hold in your mind as we continue. If this was genuinely spontaneous, how did Harry's name end up on a card on a flight Harry was not taking? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think, because the next two pieces of evidence are going to make that question significantly harder to answer. Thing 2. The captain's note. Look at the card again. Look past the main inscription. Look at the bottom. Set apart from the body of the card, in a different hand entirely, is a separate note. A second inscription, written by someone else. It reads, "Lovely to have you on board. Congratulations on the anniversary." Signed by the captain, Captain Ed French. Read that sentence again. Not "congrats" scrawled under someone else's message. Not a signature added to a card a crew member already wrote. A complete, grammatically finished, fully punctuated sentence from the person flying the aircraft, acknowledging by name a specific personal occasion belonging to a passenger he had never previously met. Now let's talk about what captains actually do before a flight. This is not speculation. This is documented operational procedure at every commercial airline on Earth. Before every departure, a captain receives a pre-flight brief. That brief covers the manifest. Premium passengers, public figures, dignitaries, anyone the airline has flagged for elevated attention or special handling, they are on that brief. Every airline does this. British Airways is not an exception. It does not claim to be an exception. For Captain Ed French to have written that complete, considered sentence, naming the anniversary, addressing a specific occasion, distinguishing his message from the crew's, he knew. Before pushback, he knew the date, he knew the occasion, he knew what the gesture was for. Now how? There are exactly 3 possible sources. There is no fourth. Either Meghan's office briefed British Airways before she boarded, which is standard corporate practice for high-profile travelers who wish to arrange a specific occasion on board, or British Airways' own internal passenger system flagged her executive club profile and surfaced the relevant personal data automatically, a capability, as we will discuss in a moment, that British Airways has documented on its own published website. Or Captain Ed French spent part of his pre-flight preparation researching the personal wedding anniversaries of his premium passengers from public records. Those are the three possibilities. Captains do not, as a rule of commercial aviation, materialize celebrity wedding anniversaries from nothing 20 minutes before pushback. One of those three things happened. The question is, which one? British Airways has already told us exactly how the second option works. In its own words, on its own website. Thing 3, the document nobody mentioned. Here is the piece of evidence that nobody in the friendly press coverage of this story mentioned. Not People, not Hello, not GB News, not a single outlet that ran the heartwarming angle stopped to check the thing that changes everything. British Airways states, in its own published privacy policy, available right now on the airline's legal page, placed there because data protection law requires airlines to tell passengers precisely how their personal information is being used, that its crews use executive club data to welcome passengers back on board. Read that again slowly. Executive club data, loyalty profiles, preferences, travel history, and personal milestones, the precise category of information that a frequent flyer program would store, the precise mechanism that would allow a cabin crew to know a passenger's anniversary before the flight departs, the precise capability that would explain how a card gets addressed to both halves of a marriage before the plane has left the gate. That mechanism exists. It is not a theory. It is not a reading between lines. It is documented airline policy, published by British Airways, in plain English, on their own website, right now. Whether it was triggered for Meghan's specific flight on May 18th, British Airways has not said. The Daily Mail asked. The Telegraph asked. The Sun asked. The Express asked. 4 major national newspapers, all making direct inquiries to British Airways' press office, all asking the same basic question. Did the card happen the way it was presented? British Airways' answer, across every single inquiry? Silence. The silence that speaks. I want to be very precise about what that silence means, because this is the most important part of the entire story, and it is the part that the coverage has most spectacularly failed to interrogate. Standard PR practice for an airline that has just received genuinely positive A-list coverage is a confirming statement. The template practically writes itself. Something brief, something warm, something like, "We are delighted our crew could make the Duchess of Sussex's journey so special." 2 sentences, cost nothing, sent to every outlet that ran the story. Gets picked up across every aggregator from here to New York. Free positive coverage for British Airways, amplified by one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. That statement has not been issued. The airline that was supposedly the spontaneous, unprompted author of a heartwarming anniversary gesture has looked at 4 separate national newspaper inquiries and decided it cannot answer any of them on the record. There is only one reason a press office doesn't confirm a story that it would be delighted to confirm. Because confirmation is not something the airline is currently in a position to offer, whether the problem would be confirming that the moment was arranged in advance, whether the problem would be confirming that passenger loyalty data was used to facilitate it, whether the problem is something else entirely that we cannot yet see, only British Airways knows. But the choice to stay silent when confirmation would cost nothing and generate enormous goodwill tells you that confirmation would, in fact, cost something. That is a considered organizational choice. That is a press office that has looked at the specific question being asked and decided the honest answer creates a problem. The royal correspondent saw it too. Here is something worth noting. The people who cover the Sussexes professionally, The royal correspondents who have been watching this PR operation run for years looked at the same week's content and named it for exactly what it was. The Daily Beast's Tom Sykes, who actually flew to Geneva to cover Meghan's WHO speech, opened his anniversary write-up by noting that Meghan had done what Meghan does to mark a milestone. She posted to Instagram. That is not a compliment. That is a description of a pattern. A documented, repeating, entirely predictable pattern of content production around significant personal dates. Alison Boshoff, watching the same week's output roll out on Palace Confidential, noted directly, "I fear this huge photo dump was intended to funnel people to the brand because this year they really have to make money." Richard Eden, sitting beside her, went further. He described what he saw as using children for commercial gain. These are not royal critics with an axe to grind. These are the Daily Mail's own on-camera panel, looking at the same week's Sussex content, the photo dump, the candle launch, the anniversary post, the British Airways card, and reading it collectively as a coordinated commercial push. The British Airways card lands in that context. It is not a standalone sweet moment that happened to coincide with a big content week. It is the warm, human, emotionally resonant ingredient in a week's content package. The one designed to go in the lifestyle column. The one that makes audiences feel that even ordinary strangers, cabin crew on a 12-hour transatlantic flight, still love Meghan, still remember 2018, still want to celebrate the marriage. It is the most emotionally effective piece of content in the entire week's output, which is precisely why it is worth understanding how it was made. What the evidence actually establishes. Let me be honest with you about what we can and cannot prove, because precision matters more here than a confident conclusion. None of the three pieces of evidence alone proves that the card was staged. That is worth saying clearly. The addressing to both halves of a couple could theoretically result from a crew member assuming Harry was elsewhere on the aircraft, though no published account places him there. The captain's anniversary note could theoretically result from a passing conversation in the pre-flight period. The British Airways privacy policy could theoretically be a standard legal disclosure that was never activated for this specific journey. Each of those charitable readings is possible in isolation. Together, stacked against each other, they become progressively harder to sustain. And all three of them come apart completely against the single most important element of the story. British Airways' sustained, deliberate silence when asked the one question that would resolve everything in an instant. A genuine, spontaneous gesture is the easiest story in British corporate PR to confirm. Crew member goes above and beyond, celebrity posts, newspaper asks if it was real, airline confirms, crew member gets name-checked. Airline collects 5 national headlines of free positive coverage. That is a PR gift with a bow on it. British Airways looked at this particular gift and decided not to open it. That decision, made across 4 separate national newspaper inquiries, is the fourth and most important piece of evidence in this story. The production logic of a Sussex PR moment. Zoom out now. Because the BA269 card is not just a story about a card, it is a case study in how a specific kind of Sussex PR moment gets assembled in real time. There is a playbook. It is not a secret playbook. It is an observable one, documented across years of coverage if you are willing to read the pattern rather than just the individual headlines. Step 1. A setting. A flight, a restaurant, a school visit, a public appearance, something with other people present. Something that generates natural witnesses. Step 2. A willing participant. Someone in the setting, a crew member, a passerby, a staff member, who can be positioned as the spontaneous author of the warm moment. Step 3. Documentation. A photograph, a card, a screenshot, something shareable. Step 4. A friendly outlet with a ready deadline. People magazine in this case. the primary outlet for Sussex candid moments since 2017. Consistently, reliably, every time. Step 5. An anonymous source described as close to the Duchess. The British Airways card had all 5: the flight, the crew, the card, and the photograph. People magazine. The source close to the Duchess. The question is whether those 5 elements arrived spontaneously or by arrangement, and the 3 things on the card, taken together with the airline's complete silence, point, clearly and consistently, in one direction. The 7-word question. From the beginning of this video, I told you there was a 7-word question at the heart of this story, a question nobody in the friendly press coverage bothered to ask out loud. 7 words that matter more than anything in the People exclusive, the Hello write-up or the GB News follow-up combined. Here it is. Why does it say Harry and Meghan? That is the question. 7 words. Harry was not on the flight. Every published account agrees on this. The People article does not place him there. The Hello write-up does not place him there. GB News describes it as Meghan's solo connection through London. His own public statements, repeated and recent, establish that he does not travel to the United Kingdom. And yet, the card, still on her Instagram right now, visible to anyone, says Dearest Harry and Meghan. Both names, a couple, 2 people, a marriage. Why? If this was a spontaneous gesture from crew members who simply decided to celebrate a passenger's upcoming anniversary, they would have written her name. The name of the person in front of them. The person who is sitting in the seat. That is how spontaneous gestures work. For Harry's name to appear on that card, someone had to put it there. Someone holding a pen, on a flight he wasn't taking, chose to address him by name, alongside his wife. That is not an accident of phrasing. That is a decision, and decisions require instructions. Whose instructions? The People magazine pipeline. Let's talk about the People magazine exclusive for a moment, because the sourcing of that article tells its own story. A source close to the Duchess of Sussex. That is the attribution. That is the entire basis for the official narrative of spontaneity. One unnamed person, described only by their professional proximity to Meghan, telling People magazine that this was a genuine, unplanned outpouring of warmth from British Airways cabin crew. People magazine does not receive spontaneous royal stories. It receives briefed ones. The pattern of its Sussex coverage, sustained across years, is not a pattern of reporters stumbling across warm moments. It is a pattern of briefed exclusives landing in a specific outlet with a specific source description, on a specific timeline that consistently aligns with Meghan's personal milestones and product launches. Between the wheels of BA 269 touching down at LAX and the People article going live, 12 to 18 hours passed. In that window, someone made a phone call or sent an email to a People editor. Someone provided the quote. Someone approved the framing. That is not spontaneous. That is placed. The source close to the Duchess is not a passerby who witnessed something touching. That is a communications source, a professional, someone whose job includes knowing which outlet to call, which editor to brief, and how to frame an anniversary card as an unplanned act of love from strangers. The card is warm. The People article is warm. The Instagram post is warm. Everything about the official version of this story is warm. The mechanism behind it is not warm. It is professional. It is coordinated. And it has left 3 pieces of evidence on a card that anyone can read. What British Airways knows and won't say. Let's return to the airline one final time, because its silence deserves to be examined from every angle. British Airways is not a small operation. It is a FTSE-listed international carrier with a dedicated corporate communications team, a 24-hour press office, and extensive experience managing high-profile passenger stories. When something happens on one of its flights that generates national press coverage, it knows about it. When 4 separate national newspapers contact its press office asking for confirmation, It responds with a considered institutional position. Its considered institutional position on every single inquiry about the BA269 anniversary card has been silence. Not, we do not comment on individual passengers. Not, our crew take pride in making every journey special. Not a single warm, vague, non-confirming statement that would cost nothing and generate goodwill. Just silence. Sustained across 4 separate inquiries from 4 separate editorial teams at 4 separate national newspapers. British Airways also publishes, on its own legal page, a privacy policy that describes the exact mechanism by which its crew can access a passenger's executive club data, including personal milestones, to personalize the service experience. That document exists. It is live. It explains in plain English how a captain could know an anniversary and how a crew could address a card to both halves of a couple before the plane departs. The airline has published the mechanism. It has declined to confirm whether the mechanism was used. The combination of those two facts, documented capability, sustained silence, is not ambiguous. The full picture. Stand back and look at the complete picture of May 18th to May 19th, 2026. A passenger boards a 12-hour flight in the premium cabin. She is traveling alone, returning from a speech at the World Health Organization. 6 hours into the flight, a card is presented. The card is addressed to both halves of her marriage, despite her husband not being on the aircraft. The captain adds a complete sentence naming her anniversary in his own hand. The card is posted to Instagram the following morning. A People exclusive is live by afternoon, sourced to someone close to the Duchess. The story runs in Hello, in GB News, in every aggregator that copy-pasted the same source line. British Airways, asked by 4 national newspapers to confirm the moment happened as described, says nothing. 3 pieces of evidence on the card itself. 1 sustained institutional silence from the airline. 1 documented PR mechanism explained in the airline's own privacy policy. 1 People exclusive with a professional source. None of this is a coincidence. None of this is a collection of unrelated details that happen to land on the same Instagram post. This is a content operation. Visible, documented, and, because of 3 details nobody thought to look at carefully, exposed. The card is still on Meghan's Instagram. The People article is still live. British Airways has still not said a single word to any of the national newspapers that asked. Captain Ed French's complete sentence is still in the inscription, and the airline's own published privacy policy still explains, in plain English, exactly how a crew could have known what to write before Meghan ever boarded. 3 things. The addressing to a couple where only one was present. The captain's finished sentence naming an anniversary he had no obvious way of knowing. And the documented corporate mechanism that explains both, combined with an airline that looked at a PR gift and decided not to take it. That combination does not describe a spontaneous moment. It describes a prepared one. And the 7-word question that sits underneath the entire story, why does it say Harry and Meghan when only Meghan was on the flight, still has no answer from anyone in a position to give one. So here is what I want from you now, because I genuinely want to hear your take on this. Do you think the British Airways anniversary card was a genuine, unplanned gesture from crew members who somehow knew the anniversary date, addressed an absent husband by name, and moved a captain to compose a grammatically complete sentence on his pre-flight brief? Or do you think the combination of all 3 details, plus the airline's choice to stay silent rather than collect the easiest PR win of the year, suggests that what we are looking at is not spontaneous at all? Leave your honest answer in the comments, not a guess. Your actual read, having seen all 3 pieces of evidence laid out together. If this kind of careful, document-based analysis is what you come to this channel for, the subscribe button is right there. And a like, genuinely, helps us reach more people who want this standard of coverage rather than the copy-paste version. The next one is already in production. See you there.